you have to be a fanboy to run the new OS26? Maybe. You're watching Techstrong Gang. Hey everyone, happy Tuesday. It's Alan Shimel for Techstrong Gang. Welcome to our Tuesday show. Mike Vizard, we gave him the week off. So he won't be here the rest of this week, but we've got some great people to fill in for him, of John Swartz primarily, one of our editors here at Techstrong. So we're looking forward to a great week of Techstrong Gang. We've got some great stories to kick off your Tuesday for you, as well as some great people to talk about it with. Let me introduce you to our gang members in attendance for today. We have Stephen Foskett, JP Morgenthal, John Swartz, and Mitchell Ashley with a feline companion. Hey, Mitch, how are you, man?
Good. I was just vibe coding. Sorry, I got here just in time.
I got you. She was vibe coding, or you were?
That's my companion, Nate, my vibe coding companion.
Okay, very cool.
Mascot.
All right. So guys, let's jump right into it. You know, John, I put up an article last week. Apple put up public betas, developer betas, I think is the official term, for the entire portfolio. From Watch to Mac to iMac to MacBook to iPad and iPhone, all the same. They're all Mac OS 26. What do you think?
So it was interesting. I read your article. It was really, really interesting. And in a sense, the iOS 26 public beta was released, as you said, last week. And, things could change in the final release in the fall. We're assuming we're going to have the new iPhones probably announced in early September. And from the impression that I got from your article is that you were pleasantly surprised as our resident Apple fanboy. And what I want to ask you about, and kind of kick off the conversation, is what features stood out to you? I know we've heard about the liquid glass interface. There was always the murmurs about Apple Intelligence and to what extent it will be in the system. Well, I'm wondering about those two things, but I'm also wondering if there's one platform in this release cycle that stands out the most among all of them.
Sure. Good stuff, John. Well, I will tell you, the liquid, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But in this beholder's eye, liquid glass is very pretty. It maybe takes a little getting used to. It didn't take me very long. And it is very pretty, but it's eye candy, right? I don't know if it actually enhances the user experience or, more functionality. What's interesting is there's a goodie in OS 26 for every single platform, but they're not all the same goodies. So each platform has its own sort of unique goodies that are in there. For me, the biggest lift was for iPad. It really has made your iPad into a laptop replacement. Right now, I have two iPads. I have the iPad Air, and I have the other, both the 10, 11-inch one, not the massive one, but latest processors. And I use a Magic Keyboard on both of them. I have Magic Keyboards. So it was already sort of laptop-ish. But now with the ability to resize my windows, multitask, have two windows open on the screen at the same time, dynamically resizing them, and the Mac-like ribbon where I can switch around pops up like hidden magic. It really does feel like I'm working on my laptop. It's that 11-inch factor. It's light, it's snappy, it's still an iPad when I want it to be, a tablet, a big phone, whatever you want to call it. But it really, there's almost nothing I can't do on my MacBooks or my iMac that I can't do on my iPad now. And I think this is going to set it free. You're laughing, Stephen.
Yeah, can I just one brief follow-up, then I'll leave. I'll get out of the way. But compared to the last couple of years where we had a lot of incremental announcements, would you say that based on what you saw, you're more excited about what will come with an iPhone rather than, say, the last couple of years where it seemed to kind of got into this rut with Apple.
Yeah. So I will tell you the big changes in the iPhone, and keep in mind, I'm only using this over the weekend so far, right? The big changes I've seen with the iPhone. So a big change for me, call me shallow Hal, but when you're playing music, like I'm playing a playlist or a station or what have you, it doesn't like stop, a song doesn't stop and then the next song starts in a second or two. It has sort of like a DJ mix in, right? I was playing the new Billy Joel, like 7 hours that he released with his the special on Netflix or wherever it was, or HBO Max, excuse me. And so he released this whole music, contemplation, and it mixes it. When I was on my boat Saturday playing Apple Music playlist, and it was mixing in, from one song, transitioning one song to the next. That was pretty cool. Apple never did that before. But overall, I would say the biggest thing I've seen on the iPhone is, despite what we heard that there was nothing new in Apple Intelligence, there isn't anything big and flashy. There's not, I haven't played with Siri. I'm not a Siri person, to tell you the truth. I haven't played with Siri to tell you if that's a big improvement. But you could see subtle Apple Intelligence, subtle AI, subtle, more intuitive and grabbing stuff and making it more available to you easily in the iOS. I would say that's the biggest change to the iOS, not the iPad OS, is subtle intelligence built in there. Stephen, you were laughing. You had something to say.
Well, I am also a fan of Apple hardware and software, and I use my phone, my iPad, my Mac all the time, every day. And I absolutely hate iOS 26 and Mac OS 26. It's ugly. It's incredibly inefficient in terms of space. The user interface metaphor makes no sense whatsoever. It's unreadable. The things that I like about or about iOS and iPad OS are actually some of the things you mentioned, like the windowing finally makes some sense. But I just can't get past the liquid glass. All the UI elements are huge and waste space on the 11-inch screen. Even on a 14-inch MacBook Pro, the new beta of Tahoe, all of the radiuses and chamfers and pop-ups and everything, they're so huge that they give you a lot less space to actually do anything with. And they're incredibly ugly and hard to read because, the background is kind of bleeding through this alleged glass-looking thing, but it bleeds through too much. So you can't actually freaking read the text anymore. I mean, I don't want to sound like some old man here, but just give me a black, flat background with white text or the opposite of that so that I can actually read it.
You weren't chasing any kids away from in front of your house this weekend, were you?
Get off my lawn.
Go play in front of your own house.
It reminds me of the Aqua UI from the original Mac OS way back when, which frankly is cartoonish and awful. And on every platform I've tried to use this new liquid glass, I just keep saying, what were they thinking? The dynamic island on the iPhone in the last release of iOS was so nice. It was this cool little blobby black thing, and it like expanded and contracted and had these nice little, but it was high contrast, it was readable, it was usable. This is like that, except if it was completely illegible.
Yeah. Coming from a software development engineering background, I can't imagine. That's what I thought about when I read your article, Alan. I can't imagine how difficult it must be to be in the operating system product group these days. I mean, we are how many years into operating system advancement? And it's like, well, we can't go and say we're not changing anything. It just, would send the wrong message. But the truth of the matter is, where do you expect this, the upward momentum of change to occur in metaphors? Now, What would have been interesting to me with this release, given all that we've had, the growth in generative AI over the past 5 years, what would have been interesting would be to have seen an operating system that actually more embraced dynamic behavior based on generative AI, like learning about who you are and generating your UI on the fly, right? Steven, you're like, oh, Steven doesn't like this. How would you like this, Steven? Right? I mean, to me, that's the next level of change that has to come. And the little tweaks and changes and things that occur within the product group are just waste of time at this point. You're just, spinning wheels to make an announcement.
Well, I think actually Apple Health has been leaking information to the OS group because every time I need to get my glasses upgraded to continue seeing the smaller and smaller user interface of the current products, they're like, oh, we need to make them bigger so that I don't know which generation, but the greatest generation or our generation or the coming one can use these products. Now, I think, I mean, it is said that this is done as a overhaul and just a major design change, design improvement. I think what's understated is they're trying to unify the UI across their devices to the degree they can. And you can argue whether that's a good thing or bad thing, or it's the lowest common denominator. So they all kind of suffer a bit to be able to support an iPhone and a Mac that has enough of the same similar properties. It does remind me of when Microsoft moved to the ribbon menu, and I hated it. I hated the ribbon menu, and I lambasted Microsoft on Network World and Computer World and everything I wrote for, saying this is the stupidest idea. We have to relearn how to use all your products. Well, now nobody thinks twice about it, and people come along with it. So we'll probably end up there someday. Stephen may still hate it, but he'll get along with it. Okay, I think.
So Apple's kind of in this conundrum though, where they keep getting dinged every year they do a major announcement, not just a WWDC, but the iPhone events. So in a sense, they're dinged for being too kind of conservative and not doing enough. And then if they try to do something radical, they're going to get pushback. It's something like Facebook never hesitated to make a major change, and whether the users liked it or not, that they would eventually adopt it. I kind of wonder if Apple finds itself kind of in the same tension.
Yeah, well, I do think that they felt the need to do something different, and I'll say the smaller the screen, the better liquid glass looks. So on the watch, I haven't used it myself, but I've seen a lot of screenshots. And by the way, Six Colors has incredible reviews of all of these betas. If you really want to hear an unvarnished and in-depth review, the Apple Watch looks really sweet. And in my experience, I put the beta on my phone, and I actually kind of like it on the phone. But then I moved to the iPad, and I kind of don't like it. And on the Mac, I really seriously don't like it. So I think that it kind of gets to what JP was saying and what Mitch was saying, that they're trying to make a unified user interface across all of these. But these devices are so different that maybe we don't need a unified user interface or a look and feel. Maybe we ought to have liquid glass on the phone, but maybe not on the iPad so much. I think that would probably solve some of these things. And JP, if I had an AI built user interface, it would probably be black background with green text like a VT220 and no decorations at all. So have at it, AI.
2270. We need those
Yeah,
back.
and like I said before, go play in front of your own house. But I did put it on my watch. I've been running it on my watch. Other than the numbers when you first, or letters, whatever, when you go to log into your watch, like put in your passcode or whatever, after that, I'm not seeing a huge difference in the applications. What I did, from a liquid glass point of view, from a functionality point of view, I kind of liked the Workout Buddy. It was a little clippy kind of thingy, but it's different. Way to go, Alan. Way to go. But so I thought I thought the watch had the least kind of change to the interface from a glass point of view, though there were. I'm and I don't know this for a fact, but I heard the next generation watch is going to be able to do a glucose monitoring, blood pressure, and other things like this, perhaps. And that'll remains to be seen. But I also have it on my big iMac screen, and my iMac screen, I run a 2 monitors set up with a 5K monitor next to it, and it does not look comical on a real high res like that. But as I said in the beginning, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and it does take some getting used to. But let me mention one other thing to us, and we'll take comments and call it a day on this topic. I'm looking forward to the new web browsers from AI and Perplexity, because
OpenAI, yeah.
From OpenAI and Perplexity, excuse me, because I'm thinking we need a whole new paradigm. Are we done with Windows and mice? Or is there a better way, to Stephen's point, of communicating and your computer or device, because we don't call them all computers anymore, are we coming to a better way of your interaction with your device than clicking on a window or resizing a window or clicking a button, right? Are we moving beyond Xerox PARC after 50 years?
Well, that's what I thought maybe liquid glass would be, a transitionary interface to NLP, and it's not. I mean, maybe Siri will be better integrated into the experience. We'll have to see. I'm also not a huge Siri user myself, but there's been no claims laid that this is their progress towards getting there. We'll see. But, we'll see what the browsers look like you're talking about from Perplexity and OpenAI.
Yeah, I would call out to Alan's point in the article. I do think that they've been making continual improvements to Siri and a lot of the other AI features that have made them somewhat slightly better. Well, maybe not Siri, but many of the other AI. And another thing I'll point out, I am a big power user. I'm a Mac power user, absolutely. They've done so much more in Spotlight search. It's gotten way better after being way worse in the last version of Mac OS. I mean, like sometimes it wouldn't even find things that it should have found that are like obvious, but it appears to have gotten a lot better in the beta. So I do think there's a lot of under the hood stuff.
Yep. There's more. Beauty is not just skin deep. All right, let's take a break on that. We're going to come back and kind of switch gears up a little bit, talk about AI and Sparks. You're watching Techstrong Gang.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
We are back with the gang, and for decades, the software development landscape has been largely defined by a fundamental tension, even a conundrum, this gap between having a brilliant idea and then making it a reality. So developers have typically navigated complex setup processes, configuration headaches, deployment pipelines that took weeks just to establish before writing a single line of meaningful code. That might end or might be changed significantly with GitHub's latest innovation called Spark, which is designed to collapse this timeline from weeks to minutes. I want to start it off with JP. I'm wondering if you think GitHub Spark, which I believe is available now in public preview for a Copilot Pro Plus subscribers, represents a meaningful shift in how we approach application development.
This is not new. There are a number of startups out there that are offering this capability right now. There are a number of VS Code plugins that have provided this capability for developers at the moment. The Claude Code is one of the more popular tools right now that is in use, that will allow you to basically submit a product requirements document and develop the entire application for you from or at least a rough initial version of your application based on that. Some of them that are out there actually will take handwritten drawings of what the screen should look like and convert them into React.js applications. So I don't see this as new or innovative in any way above and beyond what's out there today. I think it's interesting that it's kind of being, if anything that's interesting here in this story is that GitHub, which is kind of started, if you remember from, the replacement for CVS, the code repository is now becoming this real hub for all aspects of development, right? And that is, all those other things I mentioned, they kind of leave you stranded in the process, right? You're still responsible for building your DevOps pipeline around it. You're still got to figure out how to address, the changes that you want to make, the maintenance of the application, how to deploy that. And the thing that I think Spark will add or offer the users is the ability to kind of get all that running, right? I'm, all right, Spark, add me a workflow so that when I check in, it automatically deploys. Spark, do this, so it's, yeah, I got my app, but I also have the ability from within that environment to create the way to test and operate that new application. And that would add to the services that are offered by some of these other startups that I mentioned.
JP, as I think about it, the way I see the market developing, we are in a transitional period. To your point about software engineering, there's kind of two main paths that we're going down. One is the IDE based or the hybrid IDE, where it's an IDE plus a chat session, an interactive session with whatever model that you're using. It can be through a web browser, it can be a plug-in to your IDE, but we're still looking at code. We're still seeing it, watching it. Maybe we're analyzing it, maybe we're not, but it's intended for a more technical audience. Then there's the no-code audience, which is just give me an interface. Here's my document. Here's my requirement. Help me build something. That's the Firebase, Google Firebase Studio kind of products, and some of them have that also within the IDE, but it's still an IDE. I think this is a very conscious effort, and both of those are evolving at their own paths, because the IDE path is also dipping down into the CLI. Here's now you have AI at the CLI level as well as your IDE. There's a mouthful. But going the no code route, I think this is very intentional by GitHub to attract or expand, open the kimono to a larger group of users, because GitHub does not attract non-technical users. You land on GitHub and most people would say, I don't know what all those files are. It looks like a file system. What is this thing for? But if you go into Spark, it looks like a chat interface and for building an app. Now they talk about micro apps, meaning they're not trying to get too fancy or sophisticated. So I think that's part of the attention here. You could also see it as kind of an experiment. Can they attract more users beyond the traditional developers?
And I do see this as a fundamentally different kind of product in that it is specifically designed, as you pointed out, not just to write the code, but to build everything else as well. So essentially you can say, I wish there was an app that would let me, I don't know, count my dog's steps while we go on a walk. And not just like, oh, well, here's some code that could be useful in making that happen, but it'll literally like create the whole thing and deploy it for you in the cloud. And then bada bing, bada boom, you're watching your dog's steps the next day. The problem is, in my mind, that by making it so easy, and again, I don't want to sound, okay, I'm going to sound like the old man yelling at people. Okay, come on, bring it. I can take it.
That's today's theme.
That's today's thing.
That's your persona.
I am going to get you a folding lawn chair, but it's okay.
But the point is, by making it so easy to deploy, essentially you are cutting out any kind of adult supervision of that product. And I'm worried that what we're going to end up with is people just rolling out all of these apps. I mean, we hear about all these privacy data breaches and so on. This recent one where, women's driver's license were exposed to like 4chan trolls. Things like that. Well, I bet that that's going to become a lot more popular and common if some of these AI driven apps make basic mistakes in their infrastructure configuration and database configuration and security models, because there is no security model. It's just sort of like, yep, bada bing, there you go. Got yourselves a database. Have fun with that.
So we discussed this on yesterday's show. It was an article I wrote on Security Boulevard, which is the S in vibe coding stands for security. There is none. But that being said, it is unfortunately, and I say this as a security person, this isn't new. Whenever something new comes down the pike, security is an afterthought. Security is a bolt-on. Security only gets built in when enough people bitch and moan about it. And so we're not up to the bitch and moan, except for Stephen. We're not up to the bitch and moan stage
I'm
yet.
gonna defend. Yeah, I'm gonna back up Stephen on this, because I had the same impression. Is like, and when you talk about speed, getting there faster, bigger, better. There's always a compromise. There's always kind of you take a shortcut to something. Inevitably, there are consequences. And I thought about the security hole here. So I totally agree with
we
Stephen.
all think about the security hole, but lay yourselves down on the track and see if that train stops for you. My money is it doesn't, right? That train's full speed ahead. And that, as a security person, it's disheartening, but it's what we've seen. We saw it with the headlong rush into the cloud. We saw it with every new innovation like that. In the article I mentioned 15 years ago, doing a podcast with the CEO of MongoDB and Couchbase, and I asked them point blank, does NoSQL stand for no security? And they said, when our customer demands security, we'll build security in. That's
and
what
has
the
that
CEO
happened? Because we got so many security breaches.
Yeah, well, in NoSQL databases, they have put in some security features. It's not as bad as it was 15 years ago. But this is the issue. But make no mistake, right? Go west, young man. Progress stops for no one. We are going to see a proliferation of vibe-coded apps. Full speed ahead, damn the torpedoes, right? People are going to do it because they can. And as a security person, I will tell you the attitude has to be, we could lay down in front of the tracks and hope the train stops. That's not a good strategy. Or we could say, yes, we can. What can we do knowing that this is inevitable? It's inevitable. What can we do to try to put in some guardrails, to try to head it off at the pass, to try to anticipate what's going to happen here and do something? And I think that's the challenge to the security industry, is knowing that we're going to, this is like Saturday night, New Year's Eve night, amateur hour, all the kiddies are drinking and driving. What do you do?
Are you trying to make me feel better or worse?
No, well, but this is the reality of it. What do we do? That you're not going to stop them. The genie's out of the bottle.
Well, here's something I'd like to see. So this is frickin' Microsoft. If there's a company that is mature about software development, it's Microsoft. What I want them to do is I want them to put serious security bona fides behind this application. I want them to put some real muscle and say, these things are going to be deployed properly. They're going to be deployed with appropriate security frameworks, a real attention to security and stability, and in order to make sure that these things, and frankly, I think that would sell. People like me would love that. And people like you probably too. I mean, I can't imagine John's article about, Microsoft promises to integrate security with all their AI coded apps. That would be a great article, wouldn't it, John? You want to write that one?
Yes, I think it would be quite refreshing, actually, instead of an afterthought. I mean, that's with the comment I think Alan made about, we'll get to it. We'll address that problem once our customer starts complaining. I mean, that seems to be the attitude. It always has been in Silicon
It
Valley.
always has been.
Rush it out, then fix it later.
I was going to tap into, Alan, your mantra perspective. The train's left the station, right? This is going to happen whether we want it to or not. It has already happened. I think one unique characteristic of this is people building their own apps. They're probably building it for themselves in a lot of cases. Maybe they're building it for their business, but if they're building it for themselves, they're putting information about themselves in it, right? Maybe my dog steps, but it could be my investments or something else. And I think that may be an angle to appeal to the market is if you're building apps for yourself and you want your data protected, we're Apple. We know how to do that. We're Microsoft. We know how to do that. That's why you want to stay with us as opposed to some whatever company that, came out of the woodwork to offer the latest, greatest. Yeah, that might be interesting. But if you want to make sure your stuff is protected, we'll make sure your app is built securely. But that's only one angle. It's not going to stop everyone else from just building whatever apps using a web browser and whatever interface.
Security is a day 2, day 3 thing. Unfortunately, as much as we'd like it not to be.
Well, I do have an announcement, Alan. I was going to wait to the end, but since you and Stephen were vying for this, I think we're going to establish the Walt Kowalski Gran Torino Award, Get Off My Lawn Award. And this episode goes to, even though it's the second segment, goes to Stephen Foskett, runner-up Alan Shimel. Unless you do something in the third segment.
I'm a
may have to revisit
notable runner-up. All right. Look, it is what it is. All right, let's take a break here.
Which he never says in the movie, by the way. He doesn't say that in the movie.
Let's take a break here on the gang. Kudos to Clint Eastwood. But let's take a break here on the gang. We're going to come back and talk about IT Simplified and VMware and more. You're watching Techstrong Gang.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
We are back with Techstrong Gang, and we're going to talk about a simpler, more focused VMware. At least that's the intent. So one of the benefits, evidently, of what VMware is trying to do is simplify their product lineup, so there's less variation across customers. Everyone's going to be licensed for the entire VMware Cloud Foundation suite, rather than making these a la carte purchases of combinations, as was standard in the past. So I'm going to throw it to Stephen and ask him about this approach. And I gather the idea is large customers would then be using the top of the range VCF. That would be the focus, I guess, from the company and what they're trying to do. I leave it up to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about this last Tuesday on the Techstrong Gang as well, that essentially, as they said they were going to, Broadcom has focused VMware on VMware Cloud Foundation and has simplified everything. Now, that is remarkable. Those of us who've been in the space for a long time know how insanely complicated and confusing the VMware product lineup and licensing lineup was previously. Well, now it's pretty darn straightforward. And I actually really like this idea that essentially, look, you're going all in on VCF, we're going all in on you. Essentially, you're our kind of customer, you're doing our kind of thing. So we're going to build a product that is everything you want it to be and give you everything of that product. It's the opposite of the legendary like BMW heated seats subscription fee. This is basically, look, if you're going to use our product and if you're going to standardize on our product, then we're going to give you everything and let you do everything with it, which is pretty cool. And I've had the opportunity to be part of the recording of the Techstrong TechField Day event that's actually happening right now. And as soon as you're done listening to this, I urge you to check it out. It's available as well, sort of post viewing if you miss any part of it. But essentially, that's what VMware has done with VCF, is that they have built this thing. They stripped out a lot, yes, they've stripped out customers, they've stripped out features, they've stripped out capabilities, huge licensing SKUs, and what remains is essentially a purpose-built private cloud for large enterprise. And this thing is pretty impressive. I don't know if y'all have checked it out. Anybody else be involved in this? And what do you think of this VCF9 trend?
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mitch.
To jump in on this, when I took over an IT organization in 2010, and one of the initial things I wanted to do is how can we put our VMware infrastructure on a website or have something where it's self-service? And so this is that realization of that, where now it's platform engineers, developers, you can even integrate Argo CD to do GitOps on this new platform, the VCF platform. So I think it's a very smart move by Broadcom to be able to say, stay home. You don't need to leave the town, the state, the country. You can stay right where you are and you'll get what you want that you can get from a cloud provider on your own infrastructure, to try to, I would say stave off moving, or for those that said it's too costly or too difficult to move. I really don't have to move off of VMware now. And that simplification of the product SKUs, excuse me, Freudian slip there. All of the SKUs that they had were just ungodly. It was like tracking Microsoft SKUs. It was a beast to figure out what you got to pay for and keep your costs down.
And it's funny because people like to criticize Broadcom and say, "Oh, they're just extracting money from the customer." How was the million different licensing SKUs any different, right?
Well, the price did raise, let's face it. But let's be clear. It's not just you don't have to leave, you could stay here. You could take it with you too. If you want to go to the public cloud, this plays really well. And they talk about their relationships with AWS and Microsoft and Google for taking Cloud Foundation 9 up there. So and especially when we live in a hybrid multi-cloud world where I don't want to run one thing on my private cloud here or in my data center and run something else there and something else here, and I got to learn 3 different things, right? I want to standardize. I just want to quickly come back to the fact that, hey, if you're watching this right now, we're going to end in 3 or 4 minutes. Head on over. It's techstrongevents.com. And from there, it's the first thing right on the screen. You could click through, register for free, and get right on there. You probably only missed the first session. And what's nice is all of these sessions are available on demand. You can watch them in whatever order you want, actually. So head on over to Techstrong Events, click through, watch this. If you're watching this on our Techstrong TV broadcast, obviously, which goes off at Tuesday morning at 9:30 a.m., and it's about 10 a.m. now, 10 after. But, it is available fully on demand. So if you're watching this later or you don't have time to click over now, you can go over to techstrongevents.com, register, and watch it on your time. You won't be able to ask questions and interact with some of the speakers and everything, but you'll still get the benefits. Stephen, what are there, 5 or 6, I think, different sessions here?
Yeah. So there's, as you mentioned, the first section is sort of the overall what's new session. Then there's, best practices for deploying VCF, more about the private cloud on demand stuff, as Mitch mentioned. The shift toward self-service, platform for developing applications. My favorite, unpacking storage, all about storage in VCF. And then finally, security and resilience. So all those different
last.
Yeah, finally.
So
It's included.
I have a question before we go. Am I the only one questioning, since there is a good number of the product management team that stayed with Broadcom after the move and the acquisition. Am I the only one that's questioning the leadership of VMware in not being able to, if product management was able to come up with this under Broadcom, they must have had these ideas under VMware. And was there not friction between product management and leadership?
I don't want to talk out of school, but JP, that is 100% correct. There were people at VMware saying this well before Broadcom was sniffing around the company.
Yeah, but sometimes it takes change to accept change, right? And yeah, that's all true. But you got to give, I think I wrote this on a social media post or in the article. I wrote a couple of articles on this. You know what? For all those people who gave Broadcom grief that this was the death of VMware and this was going to make a mass exodus from VMware, Hang and the Broadcom people are crazy like a fox. They saw this had to be done and they got it done. I applaud them for it. Head over to Techstrong Events and check it out. Be your own judge. Don't listen to any of us pundits.
It's pretty good advice generally.
Yeah. All right. Hey, I think that's going to wrap us up here today for Tuesday's Techstrong Gang. I'm going to be on the road tomorrow. John and Mitch are driving the bus. And they'll keep it. I'm sure they'll do a great job. JP, Steven, John, Mitch, thanks for joining us. Thank you for joining us. You can watch the rest of Techstrong TV, but I'm telling you, go over to Techstrong Events and go watch the Broadcom event. Until next time, this is Alan Shimel for Techstrong. We're out.